Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to today's lesson from Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. This is a memoir that is written in verse. Again, a memoir is a memory from an author's life that they are writing about. And verse means that it's written in stanzas instead of paragraphs. So the poems that you're going to be reading for today's lesson are Gifted and Sometimes. So before you start reading, I want you to get your My Perspectives book in front of you and turn to page 12. We talked about this little chart in our last lesson, and I just want to touch on it again today before you start your readings. And the first thing you're going to pay attention to is the annotating and marking of vocabulary or key passages that you might want to revisit that stand out to you. You also might want to underline or highlight or write notes in the margin about whom the story is about, what happens in the story, where and when the story happens, and why the people involved in the story react the way they do. And finally, another thing that you might want to keep in mind while you are reading the poems and annotating the text is connecting to ideas within the selection that you maybe already know or that you have already read in another story or earlier in the poem, or things that you can connect to within your own life. So let's just look at this example from Brooklyn Rain. We talked about this again in our last lesson, so I'm only going to point out a couple things. Again, the word no is repeated 3 times and is highlighted in purple. So that was the reason that it was highlighted. The annotation of highlighting is because the word repeats. And the question that you could write in the margin could be, why does Woodson repeat the word no? And then you would write your conclusion after reading the whole entire poem and then maybe thinking about this a little bit more, or maybe you thought about it right away, trying to come up with a reason why she would have done this. And you could have written, the repetition emphasizes the ways in which Woodson's life in Brooklyn is different from her life in Greenville. Now, the other highlighting here in this yellowish orange, the annotating or the highlighting of these phrases appeal to the senses of smell and touch. The sweet smell of honeysuckle, the soft squish of pine, slip and slide through the grass. Those are all our 5 senses. And the question you could have written in the margin is, why does Woodson use language or words that appeal to the senses? And you could conclude and write that maybe the phrases were used to create images for the reader of how the author experienced the rain in Greenville. So your assignment to do in your book and on a Google Doc when you are finished is on pages 15 and 16. So the first poem that you're going to read is called Gifted. And this is located on page 15. You may also listen to this poem. The link for the recording is on the assignment in our Google Classroom. And you want to just read it or listen to it through fully the first time without annotating, maybe just kind of getting some ideas in your head. And then you're going to go back and you're going to read or listen to it a second time. And this time you're going to start annotating. And this is where you're going to circle those bold words or words you don't know. You might underline things that stand out, or you might want to look for phrases that are repeated. Just like in that example, maybe you're going to underline or highlight those and write your thoughts of why that might have happened, why the author did that. You would write it in the margin. And then you're going to go to page 19 after you finish this poem and annotating it, and you're going to answer question number 2 on page 19. And the answer for that question is also going to need to go on your Google Doc at the end. The second poem you're going to listen to is Sometimes, and this is on page 16 in your book. And again, you can read or listen to it. The link to listen to it is in the Google Classroom assignment. And the first time you're just going to listen to it, read it fully through without annotating. Just maybe kind of think about things that might stand out or that you're unsure of, or have a conversation with yourself about the text. Then you're going to read or listen to it the second time. And then this is where you're going to start doing your annotating for the poem. And this is where you're going to circle again those bold words or words you might not know, or underline things that stand out, and write your notes or your thoughts on the page next to the text. So this is where in this poem you might want to pay attention to the special treatment of the text, meaning some of the text looks a little different in this poem. So you want to pay attention to that, so that could be a style that the author's using because they want you to pay attention to it. And why do you think they want you to pay attention to it? And again, when you are done, you're going to go to your Google Doc. And here is the Google Doc that you are going to put your name next to the author line. You are the author of this paper. And for number 1, just like the last lesson, you're going to write 3 bullet points below, sharing your annotated notes you wrote on the side of the poem. These should be complete sentences. And we also want you to include your connection or why it was important to you. So you'll need 3 bullet points here. And those are the things that you wrote in the margin of the poem. Then number 2, you're going to write your answer for question 19. In Gifted, what does the poet hope she will one day be able to do with words? You're just going to write your answer here, again, in a complete sentence. And for number 3, from the poem Sometimes, you're going to write 3 bulleted points of words or phrases that you circled or highlighted. And next to each one, include why you circled or highlighted this. Why did it stand out to you? Why did you feel the need to annotate that? And when you are done, make sure you go back into the Google assignment and you turn this in.